All right. James Joyce, Ulysses. It's the Portable Infinite. Alexander Lawrence talking about James Joyce, Ulysses, part 6, chapter 6. This is the first chapter. Is a lot of dialogue and a lot of characters. Bloom's in there, but and let's see. Oh wow, some letters from. Are you gonna get that? All right, hold on. Oh, I had a phone call there. Okay, so here's the Ulysses, the modern library version. It's a little bit different. This is the modern library edition. The 1934 and copyrighted in 42 by Nora Joyce. The modern library edition from the 30s and 40s. This is the Gabler edition. Came out in 1984, and if there's enough likes, there's gonna be. I'm gonna recite some of Finnegan's Wake. I hope I have that book around. So I'll have to check some of these books out. I made a little list of all the books I'm gonna read this year. And here's the Odyssey. This is the Robert Fagles is usually the one that everyone checks out. I think I have the Iliad up there somewhere. What's that? That's the John Steinbeck. But the Robert Fagles is the one everyone reads for the Odyssey. So I have those books together. So we're reading Hades chapter. Everybody should read this. This is kind of maybe where people start to get frustrated because it gets sort of weird from here on. And this is the longest chapter. It's almost 25 pages. So I'll read the beginning of it. And it's and you kind of see as Bloom, he's like the four guys: Simon Dedalus, Martin Cunningham, and Bloom, and one other guy. Mr. Power. Bloom's sort of the outsider in this, even in this group here. Okay, so chapter 6. Martin Cunningham first poked his silk-hatted head into the creaking carriage, and entering deftly, seated himself. Mr. Power stepped in after him, curbing his height with care. "Come on, Simon. After you," Mr. Bloom said. Mr. Dedalus covered himself quickly and got in, saying, "Yes, yes. Are we all here now?" Martin Cunningham asked. "Come along, Bloom." Mr. Bloom entered and sat in the vacant place. He pulled the door to after him and slammed it twice till it shut tight. He passed an arm through the arm strap and looked seriously from the open carriage window at the lowered blinds of the avenue. One dragged aside, an old woman peeping, nose white flattened against the plane, thanking her stars she was passed over. Extraordinary, the interest they take in a corpse, glad to see us go when we give them such trouble coming. Job seems to suit them. Hugger mugger in corners, slop about in slipper slappers for fear he'd wake. Then, getting it ready, laying it out, Molly and Mrs. Fleming making the bed. Pull it more to your side. Our winding sheet. Never know who will touch. Never know who will touch you dead. Wash and shampoo. I believe they clip the nails in the hair. Keep a bit in an envelope. Grows all the same afters. Unclean job. All waited. Nothing was said. Stowing in the wreaths, probably. I am sitting on something hard. Ah, that's soap in my hip pocket. Better shift it out of that. Wait for an opportunity. All waited. Then wheels were heard from in front, turning, then nearer the horses' hooves. A jolt. Their carriage began to move, creaking and swaying. Other hooves and creaking wheels started behind. The blinds of the avenue passed, and number 9, with its crepe knocker door ajar at walking pace. They waited still, their knees jogging. till they had turned and were passing along the tram tracks. Tritonville Road, quicker. The wheels rattled, rolling over the cobbled causeway, and the crazy glasses shook, rattling in the door frames. What way is he taking us? Mr. Power asked through both windows. Irish Town, Martin Cunningham said. Ringsend, Brunswick Street. Mr. Dedalus nodded, looking out. That's a fine old custom, he said. I'm glad to see it has not died out. All watched a while through their windows, caps and hats lifted by passers. Respect. The carriage swerved from the tram track to the smoother road past Watery Lane. Mr. Bloom at gaze saw a lithe young man clad in mourning, a white hat. There's a friend of yours gone by, Dedalus, he said. Who is that? Your son and heir. Where is he? Mr. Dedalus said, stretching over across the carriage, passing the open drains and mounds of ripped up roadway before the tenement houses, lurched round the corner and swerving back to the tram track, rolled on noisily with clattering wheels. Mr. Dedalus fell back, saying, Was that Mulligan cat with him? His Fidus at Chate's? No, Mr. Bloom said. He was alone. Down with his Aunt Sally, I suppose, Mr. Dedalus said. The Golding faction, the drunken little cost drawer, and Chrissy, Papa's little lump of dung, the wise child that knows her own father. Mr. Bloom smiled joyously on Ringside Road. Wallace Brothers, the Bottle Works, Daughter Bridge. So, yeah, most of they're in a line there, and it's a funeral procession. There's four of them in a carriage, and there's other carriages, and this is and then it goes up to page 96 in this book, and that's when it starts to get kind of weird. I'll put that in there. Okay, so and the old one, let's see. There's that looks like chapter 5 there. I don't even know if they have the chapters. Yeah, I mean that was the other thing about when you read this book, you didn't know. They didn't really mark the chapters so much. So where are we at now? Okay, yeah, here. Okay, here. So here's yeah. Okay, so this book. Okay, so it goes up to 114, and then we have, if you can see it, the next chapter is the paper headlines, and then you get to this one on page 97. Oh, it's like that, but it's not as big. It's not as big, but it's there, but it's fucking smaller type. So, but in the original, you kind of, it was like really big type, so it just seemed like you kind of got the idea that it was like newspaper headlines and stuff. So that was like the difference between the old. That's why I'll probably bring this out next time too. So let's go to the summary. What actually happens in this chapter? Bloom steps in the carriage with Martin Cunningham, Jack Power, Simon Dedalus, the father of Simon Dedalus. They're going to Dignam's funeral. The carriage begins to move. Bloom sees Stephen on the street, and Cunningham starts to describe his night at the pub. They're always drinking. As he read Dan Dawson's speech in the morning's paper, Bloom moves to take out the paper for Dedalus. But Dedalus signals that it would be inappropriate to read. And Bloom skims the obituaries, checks for Martha's letter, thoughts wander to Boylan. Bloom is flustered by the coincidence of they actually see Boylan's the next person they see, and he does not understand what Molly and others see in Boylan. He thinks he's kind of a dick. asks Bloom about Molly's concert, and that makes him uncomfortable. The carriage passes Reuben J. Dodd, a money lender, and the men curse him. And, it seems kind of anti Semitic. And, blah, 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 blah. And then Power says that the worst death is a suicide, and Douglas agrees. Cunningham, knowing that Bloom's father committed suicide, argues for a charitable attitude towards it. The carriage stops for a cattle crossing, and Bloom wonders aloud why there is no tram line for the cattle. And, funeral trams. Power points out a house where the child's fratricide, a well-known murder took place. Okay, the carriage arrives, the men get out, and there's only a few people. I think they list all of them. Let's see, and then there's a guy Hines who's like counting all the people that are there, and there's about 12 or 20. And Hines is a reporter. Asks Bloom for his full name, and then Bloom asks him to mention McCoy's name. You know, and then he asks. There's a man that he doesn't, unfamiliar man, extra guy, and he says the man in the Macintosh, and he just calls him. He ends up calling him Macintosh, and he writes that down. And they're at the funeral, and Bloom's, and he thinks of his upcoming visit to his father's grave. He sees a rat and thinks a rat eating a corpse. Bloom is happy to leave. Okay, so much of this episode is concerned with Bloom's relative isolation. Bloom is a latecomer, an outsider, an anomaly. And these other guys kind of represent like your average Irish guys, they drink a lot. They're in a power position. Bloom comes in. Bloom's like the last one in the carriage, and they don't talk, they don't call him Leopold or Leo or whatever. The men's attitude towards Bloom seems the men's, when they spot Reuben J. Dodd, they make fun of him for being a Jew, and Bloom feels attacked when Power, seeing Boyle, asks Bloom if he'll be accompanying Molly and Boyle into the concert. Bloom's thoughts in episode 6 did not focus on his social exclusion. He said in episode 6 parallels episode 3 thematic focus on fathers and sons. In episode 3 we saw Stephen thinking for the first time about his father, Simon Dedalus. The true pathos of episode 6 is not reserved for the funeral service, during which Bloom's thoughts seem humorously detached, giving us a defamiliarized version of the Catholic priest's activities. It is in this sense that Ulysses strives to be a truly realistic novel, instead of depicting Bloom at the funeral as a character who feels as one is supposed to feel awed, sentimental, or quietly sad. Joyce proposed to show Bloom as he would actually feel in all its messiness, self-centeredness, and inappropriateness. The pathos of Hades then is reserved for unspectacular moments or even repressed moments, such as Bloom's quiet, panic reaction when the men see and salute blazes boiling in the street. And Simon Della's scripted tearfulness near the grave of his wife later in the episode. Okay, so that's pretty much. I mean, it's a. I mean, there's some thoughts in Bloom's mind, but it's a pretty much straightforward um, chapter. Um, so up until this, and then we get to the next one, um, which is longer, and the one after that gets far more experimental. So this is first time. If you read Ulysses, I mean, you should be able to get through even the average reader to like the first person. You should be able to get to these first 100 pages pretty easily. It's pretty simple. I mean, besides um, some stream of consciousness thoughts of the characters, it's pretty easy reading. And this chapter is mostly like four Irish guys talking in in a carriage, and they go to their funeral, and it's just more life and death and love keeps us all going, in the world, like the great Joycean themes and stuff. So that's pretty much it. That's Hades. It's from there on, it gets kind of weird. There's other things going on in the novel. That's and the experimental stuff of Joyce starts like some novels, like Finnegan's Wake is totally different, or some of these other Gravity's Rainbow and a few other novels. The first 100 pages are like the hardest part. For Joyce, this is a pretty easy part, and then we get into more difficulties. And remember Macintosh. He comes back, and then they read about them in the paper and all the people that went to the funeral later at night. I think maybe like in one of the later chapters. Okay, that's it. Let's keep it short. That's Hades, James Joyce. That's the first 6 chapters. Let's move on. I hope you're enjoying this book, and I hope you're enjoying reading as much as I am. And we'll see you in a couple days.